Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to take a look at my drasha, which was emailed out earlier today. But in the meantime, I will share a brief thought on Rashi for today, which is Friday. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and instead of looking at a Rashi on the sixth Aliyah, I am going to look at a Rashi on the seventh Aliyah, the Shabbos Aliyah, which we will not get to in these Zoom sessions, only because I think it's a great Rashi and an important Rashi, and one that perhaps can be something we think about as we go into Shabbos. So towards the very end of the parsha, the end of the seventh aliyah, after Makas Barad is over, after the hail comes down and destroys so much of Egypt, there's a little postscript to the story of the hail after it's already removed. So Moshe says, Kitsesia Sa'ir, Ephrosis Kapayel Hashem. Once I go out of the city, I'm going to raise my hands. The Makkah is going to stop. Lo Ye'od Lamanti Daki Lashem Haaretz. God is going to stop the plague so that you know He's God. That's the recurring pattern and theme of the whole parsha. Is Par gets fed up. He tells Moshe to stop the plague. Moshe says, I'll ask God. God will stop it. You'll see that He's the God. You're not the God. He's powerful. You're not powerful. And you release the Jewish people. But now there's a little postscript, an agricultural postscript to this story. The Torah tells us, "V'hapishta v'haseura nukasa, ki haseura aviv v'hapishta giv'ol." The flax and the barley were afflicted. They were hit. They were damaged by the hail, by the barad that had come down during this plague. Why? Ki haseura aviv, because the seora, the barley, is aviv. It's spring. What probably means here aviv is it blossoms early. V'hapishta give all. And the flax is still in its shell, in its seed. I'm not sure, in its ear. I don't even know what you call it. I don't even know what a flax plant or flax seed actually looks like. But something of the description of these two things, of the barley and of the flax, that it's an early blossomer, and this one is still inside of something. However, the wheat and the spelt were not afflicted. Lo nuku. These were nukasa. These two were afflicted, but these two species of grain were not. Why? Ki afilos hena. Because they are late blossomers, like from afel, from darkness, right? Afela, which comes at the end of the day. So to here, afilos hena, they're at the end of the season. So these two species were nukasa because they were early blossomers, and these two species were not afflicted because they were late blossomers. And Rashi tries to explain these concepts. First, he says kiasora aviv, explaining in the first pasuk why the barley was not afflicted, because it's aviv. And as I explained before, aviv means early in the season, as Rashi explains. Kvar bichira ve'omedes bekashieha v'nishtabru v'naflu. Because it was an early blossomer, it already had strengthened itself. It became very firm, very rigid. And because of that, when the hail hit it, it cracked in half and fell over to the ground and was dead. And therefore, when the barad came, it affected the sa'ora, it affected the barley. Rashi doesn't explain fully, but that's, I think, what he means. So too with the flax, it's saying the same thing as with the barley. Because it ripened early, it's already hardened, kvar hukshat, lamod begivoleh. It's surrounded by some kind of protected coating, by some ear or by some shell that makes it very hard and very rigid, just like the early blossoming barley. And therefore, when the hail came down, it was nishtabru, it broke it. However, the chita and the kusemes, the wheat and the spelt, they were not afflicted because they're late blossomers. Ki afilos, meucharos, they're late in the season. Then because they're late in the season, adayin hayu rakos v'yecholin lamod bifnei kasha. They were still soft, they were still nimble, and therefore they were able to withstand the hard thing, the barad, that was coming down on them. That's Rashi's explanation of the agricultural features of these psukim and how the technical feature of each of these species leads it to be nukasa or leads it to be lo nuku. Either it leads it to be afflicted or not afflicted based on how hard these stalks were, which is based on how early they blossomed in the season. Now, I have no idea if any of that is agriculturally correct or accurate, but that's not my affair today. I'm not the botanist or the agriculturist or the farmer. I'm the rabbi. So from my rabbinic perspective, one has to ask, it's all very interesting, but one has to ask why there's this little appendage at the end of the parsha. There's no detail even close to this by all the other plagues of what the plagues actually affected and why it affected them. When the blood came, it didn't say, well, these waters were really affected because they have freshwater fish. These waters were not so affected because they're saltwater. It doesn't go into any detail about on any of the plagues what specific species of animals were affected by Dever more than the others and how they died and where they died. The more details we have is really, Debbie, with your frogs, that they came out, they died, they dried up, they smelled. Okay, that's a little bit of detail, but the whole plague was about the frogs. We don't have such nuanced detail about all the angles of the plague and what it affected in the world of Egypt or in the agricultural world of Egypt. But suddenly here in Makaspara, at the end of the Parsha, we have these two very detailed psukim about these 4 species of grain that were found in the field. And one has to wonder why these are appended over here. The Bali HaMusar explained that the reason why these are here and the importance of Rashi's explanation of them lies really in the lesson for each of us. And that is the lesson about being rigid or being soft. What we see from the Rashi in the Pasuk is that those species that were very, very hard, and hardness usually is a sign of strength. But over here, they were so hard, they were so rigid, that when the barad hit them, they cracked and they fell over. Whereas the other ones, which were more nimble, they were softer, they hadn't fully hardened and developed. When the barad hit them, they may have bounced a little, but then they came right back. They bounced right back. And we can see that with branches on a tree. When you have ice or snow that falls on a tree, you have very hard branches, they crack. Very dry branches, they crack. You have new young branches that are still green, they're still soft. Though the snow comes down and it weighs them down, and then they bounce back up. Same thing with the grains here in Egypt. It's a lesson to all of us that in life, sometimes you have to be a little bit nimble. You have to be a little bit soft. You have to be a little bit forgiving. You have to be a little bit flexible. And if you do have that quality to yourself of a little bit of flexibility, not total flexibility, you're still rooted in the ground, you're still planted in the ground, but you're flexible enough that when something hits you, you bounce a little bit, you deviate a little bit, but then you bounce right back. If one is too rigid, one is too hard, one is too set in their ways, then when something hits you the wrong way, as inevitably it does in life, it cracks you, you fall over, and you have no hope of bouncing back. Something for each of us to think about as we enter Shabbos, our own personalities, our own demeanor, our own behaviors, vis-a-vis ourselves, our friends, our neighbors, our community, and vis-a-vis our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Good job,
All of you.